was a divine plan. America didn't happen by chance. We put them there in charge of it. And so they're custodians. And then sometimes happens that custodians get their place and they start to think that they're the ones. But we got to remind them, y'all not the ones.
Y'all not public schools, although it will be. The history that the children are learning today is not the history that's going to be taught in the next 25 years. It's radically different. We now know for a fact that long before Columbus, there were 4 major migrations of blacks to the Americas, different parts of the Americas. It is no hoax. It was one time I thought maybe it was a hoax, but now they found over 10,000 of them. They're beautifully done. It's beyond anybody to hoax this. So here's this earlier migration, and because it was part of a mystery cult, it was not well publicized. And so we can kind of excuse historians from saying, well, there were no Romans or blacks or anybody at that time going across the ocean, but there were. The reason they didn't know about it because it was part of this mystery cult. Something of that myth, though, must have survived all the way into Mali times, to 900 AD, when those kings of Mali decided to cross the ocean. Those 2 black migrations to the Americas are not the only 2. There are 2 more, 2 earlier ones still. We go way back in history. Around 1,000 years before Christ, 3,000 years ago. It's such a long time ago, it's hard to even imagine. There were people called the Phoenicians. These were Canaanite people that are mentioned in the Bible. They were half Semitic and half something else. Who knows what they were? They were very well traveled. They were very great seafarers. And they employed all kinds of races on their ships because they didn't really have any particular homeland. They were always traveling, going everywhere. They were the first to go around Africa, known to go around Africa. Not for conquest or invasion. They did this for trade. Mali was very wealthy in gold. They had lots of minerals. Some of the black kingdoms, they were called the Yoruba or the Benin. They were great workers in bronze. But the trouble with Western Africa, and it's still the trouble today, not enough food, famine. Somehow, the black kings of Mali had preserved this tradition long before, where there was this kingdom across the sea, totally different one. It was very hard to reach. You needed to have excellent ships and good sailors, and nobody in Europe was doing it this time. But if you cross that sea, this other kingdom across the Atlantic was very rich in a certain kind of food, which the people over there called maize. We now call corn. And these West African kings launched at least 2 major fleet trading ventures that went across the Atlantic 900 AD to about 1600 AD. And they brought over their bronze work, and they taught the Mexican people, the ancient Mexican people, who were then known as the Mayas. The Mayas had built up a great kingdom of their own, but 900 AD they were in decline. They were really on the outs. Nobody knows exactly why, but their society was in decline. Mu was supposed to be a Pacific Island civilization that sank long ago, but before this land sank, this high civilization brought some of its ideas to different parts of the world. I can tell you for a fact the Polynesian legends are thick with stories about Mu. The Hawaiians have people they call the Mu, who were there before they were. They went 2 directions. They went out to what is now known as Oceania and became a people known as the Negritos. And they also went towards Mexico and impacted this Olmec civilization. The reason why we now know that is because there was a genetic trace there. You know about DNA? The genetic code of and there are still native blacks in Mexico. That's never been explained by archaeologists before Columbus arrived. DNA tests done on them. Right. Then they began a worldwide match of DNA. Well, who is this really strange black people? Who do they match up with? They don't match up with Africans. They matched up with the Negritos in Oceania. It looks now, scientists believe, there was a central point from which they went both directions. So this is a marvelous heritage, and some people say, well, you're a white guy, how can you talk about stuff like this? I get flack from this on both sides. The purpose of our magazine is to tell the truth. What connects it up is even the word Moor, because it's pronounced differently in different parts even of Africa. And they call themselves Moor, Mu, Mur. There's all variations of that, so even the name Mur. The Mali Kingdom part of their religion, around 900 AD, they believed in a god called Vodun. Vodun or Vodan. And they said Vodan was this great sailor who came across the sea, and he taught the Yoruba and the Benin how to work with him. Across the Atlantic Ocean, amongst what they call the Quiché Maya, or the lowland Maya that I talked about, they have a tradition of a god they called Vodan, same name, who brought tablets across the sea to tell them how to work metals. This is a drawing from life that was made, believe it or not, with a so-called American Indian, the southern coast of California. He was a member of the Chumash, no longer exists. When the Spaniards met up with these people, they said, these are civilized Indians. They got along extremely well with them. The reason why they got wiped out, though, was because they had no immunity to the diseases that the Spaniards brought over. And so they were all wiped out. This is the last of them, about mid of the early 19th century. They were a black people who built fantastic boats. They were like Viking boats, believe it or not. They were lat straight, over one plank over the other, so they were very resilient in the water. They had a tradition that they did not originate in America. They came from this great island out across the Pacific, and they lived in a number of islands off of California. One of them was Santa Barbara. You've heard that, right? Santa Barbara. And they called Santa Barbara Limu. That was their name for it. So this man, probably one of the last of the Chumash, represents one of these people from Mu. This is to give you some idea again of the size. These are just little divers here. The structure is just enormous. And the people that built this were the people of Mu, and this tradition survives over the course of many centuries. This is a fanciful representation, but not that fanciful, of what Mu may have looked like from all of the descriptions. It was a mountainous place. It was very large. More information has come out. There's been a marvelous discovery underwater of something called the Philippine Plate, and it's about the size of Texas. It's under the Pacific, and it was dry land, they figure, about 12,000 years ago, and it's slowly sinking even deeper today in the Central Pacific. It was a mountainous land. Their architecture appears to have been very squarish. This is similar to the Olmec heads. The heads may have been placed up high, not just sitting on the ground. They've been placed on things as gigantic, colossal representations of human head. They were great seafarers. These are navigable rivers, but they also had a lot of great canals. So this is possibly what this land of Mu looked like. This would be the origin of human civilization. If that's proved, if Mu was the place where civilization began, well then, the contribution of blacks not only to America but to the world is profound, because this is where it all started. They look kind of Phoenician, they look kind of Egyptian. Now some of the letters are Egyptian. You can translate words, but you can't translate a whole sentence. So it's like a mix of things. But they haven't figured out what that language is on those plates yet. It looks Egypto-Phoenician. The plates are all being held by Mr. Russell Burroughs. He is the discoverer of our opposition, or the only opposition we found to this really comes not from the government, but from old-style archaeologists.